The China versus US war story. Details about China making moves toward creating an improved economy in 2023, and even the country's efforts toward building a technology-based militia are among the pieces of information about China that are spreading like wildfire right now. But aren't you curious about other events which are happening in China that no one is talking about? Well, in today's video, we shall be giving you all the details about what is going on in China, which no one speaks of. Let's go. Hong Kong. China is doing everything in its power to make sure that democracy is not introduced into any part of the country. We saw examples of this happening when pro-democracy activists were unlawfully imprisoned and arrested for subversion after conducting a public opinion poll in July 2020. In September, 3 individuals from the group Student Politism were charged with conspiracy to encourage subversion because they brought refreshments to detained protesters. Another incident had people being detained for flying flags with the words "Reclaim Hong Kong, Revolution of Our Times," a slogan that had previously been outlawed in 2019. Since the National Security Law (NSL) went into effect on June 30th, 2020, more than 150 people have been detained for violating it. Tam Tak Chi, a pro-democracy activist, has been in solitary confinement since his arrest in September 2020. Other NSL suspects held in detention have been handled unfairly. The government reduced Hong Kong's ostensibly democratic institutions to rubber stamp organizations. Beijing enacted electoral reforms in March, limiting the ability of supporters of the Chinese Communist Party to obtain seats in Hong Kong's legislature. Following requests from voters to cast blank ballots in opposition to the reforms, the government altered in the election rules in April to make it illegal to incite people to cast blank ballots, punishable by up to 3 years in jail. Sometime in September, the Chinese government needed elected members of the District Council, an advisory body that counsels the government on local matters, to swear a loyalty pledge. However, approximately half of them resigned because they believed the government would disqualify them for their support of democracy. China has always wanted to stand out and be firm on its position of being an authoritarian government and banning any form of the democratic system at all costs. With the way they are going about it, they would arrest whoever is pro-democracy and possibly strip them of their positions if they currently have one. Authorities full-on attacked the freedom of the press. In June, they forced the closure of the second most read newspaper in the city, Apple Daily, after detaining Jimmy Lai, the owner of the newspaper. Alongside this, they also arrested key executives and editors, froze Lai's assets worth $64 million, and went ahead to raid the paper's offices. Lai was also given a total prison term of 14 months in April for taking part in protests, and also faced 6 other charges in 4 other different cases. Radio Television Hong Kong, which had previously been independent, was likewise changed by the government. It appointed Li Pak-chuen, who had no media experience, as the new head of the media house in May. Li thereafter banned workers from attending press award ceremonies honoring their coverage of the 2019 protests, suppressed current affairs programming, and fired journalists and talk show hosts for holding opposing views. Since the country has been running an authoritarian government, they will make sure that no fleck of democracy stains the system. China is ready to flush every single one of them out, even if it means attempting to usurp every neighboring independent city like Taiwan. There's more to tell, guys, but you have to keep watching the video and you'll get every bit of detail as we proceed. Xinjiang. On our list of things that are going on in China which no one speaks about, there is information about what is going on in Xinjiang. The Chinese government has committed crimes against humanity, and Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims are being victimized in Xinjiang due to this. According to reports, China has engaged in widespread arbitrary detention, torture, widespread surveillance, discrimination based on culture and religion, forced family separation, and forced labor, just to mention a few. News about this crisis in Xinjiang began to emerge in 2021, but the Chinese officials, who are very powerful and highly authoritative, made sure that the public would not be made aware of any such information. As a result, they restricted access to the area, and the restriction got worse due to COVID-19 mobility constraints. According to reports, several Uyghurs who vanished during Xinjiang's oppressive Strike Hard campaign against violent terrorism were imprisoned. Rahil Dawut was one of them, though what her alleged crime was, how long her sentence was, or where she was imprisoned remained unknown. Uyghurs have also reportedly passed away in custody as well, including the biotech researcher Mirai Erkin, the businessman Yaqub Haji, and the poet and publisher Haji Mizarhid Karimi. A report by the Uyghur Human Rights Project later showed that the Xinjiang authorities disposed Uyghurs by seizing $84.8 million worth of assets from 21 Uyghurs who were imprisoned and sold the seized goods online. With the amount of power that China has, neighboring governments even supported the actions of Beijing. In September, Yevgeny Bonin, a Russian-American researcher who had been working to investigate violations in Xinjiang, was banned from entering the Kazakh territory. Dulkan Issa, the head of the Uyghur exile group World Uyghur Congress, was also refused entrance by Turkey in the same month. Uyghurs living overseas from Afghanistan to Morocco were only negatively impacted by all of this, since they all feared being deported back to China when the Chinese authorities sought their return for suspected terrorist activity. Businesses were subjected to close monitoring in an attempt to find any engagement in Xinjiang-related activities. According to a source, Chinese consumers boycotted foreign apparel companies in March after promising to stop buying cotton from Xinjiang due to allegations of forced labor. In another report, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency imposed several import restrictions on products from Xinjiang, including cotton and tomatoes from the area, as well as all downstream goods made outside the region using Xinjiang cotton and tomatoes. There are already increasing calls for other nations to enact comparable bans on goods from Xinjiang. COVID-19. Whilst China is ready to implement strategic methods as regards curbing the effects of zero COVID, it is not fully accepting the actions its citizens are taking towards the protests against the lockdown. This can be regarded as something people are not speaking about. Authorities have been imprisoning and even bringing legal action against people for a long time now for criticizing how the government is handling the COVID-19 pandemic. The Twitter account Speech Freedom CN noted at least 663 arrests for speeches linked to COVID-19 between January 2020 and June 2021. Retired Professor Chen Zhaoqi was charged with picking fights and creating problems, and put on trial in March for writing on social media, "The Wuhan pneumonia is not a Chinese virus, but Chinese Communist Party virus." In August, Beijing court sentenced Chen Mei and Kai Wei, who were campaigners, to 15 months in prison after finding them guilty of picking fights and causing problems. For saving restricted web material and social media posts regarding the pandemic, they were taken into custody in April 2020. Reports further show that in December 2020, Zhang was sentenced to 4 years in prison after traveling to Wuhan to document the pandemic in February, and also in the same year, a citizen journalist, Fang Bin, who was detained in Wuhan, remained missing. Guys, that's not all. Chinese authorities began a widespread vaccination drive in 2021, but many locals objected to the fact that they were being forced to participate despite the central government's insistence that the program was voluntary. According to several reports, people were physically restrained by the police to be forcefully immunized. In other reports, authorities threatened to seize government benefits for anyone who rejected vaccination and made it a requirement for students to enroll in schools that their entire family be immunized. A proponent of vaccination safety, He Fengmei, was reportedly detained by Henan officials in October 2020, but no one knows where he is right now. China has always been known to implement the use of force whenever things don't seem to go their way. With President Xi Jinping at the helm of China's affairs, the Chinese government doubled down on its authoritarian tactics as it imposes stringent policies on its citizens. We have come to the end of today's video. What part of China's actions on their citizens have you come across before? Do share your thoughts in the comment section. If you liked the video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tap that bell icon so you can get notifications about any future videos.